That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we find ourselves in the midst of Disney's big venture into the world of streaming, having started a Star War in the process, we thought it'd be nice to stay up to date on the ever growing catalog and rule on what's a must or a bust on Disney Plus. And tonight we are talking Andor, nothing but Andor. All right. So Dragon, as you know, I've been kind of chomping at the bits to talk about this. I'm pretty stoked on this show. And as you also know, I'm like with Star Wars for me, it's kind of like I don't know. I'm one of those people where it's like I was praising The Last Jedi when it came out, I will admit. I still really like the ambitious stuff about that movie. I love Luke Skywalker's arc. I don't care what anyone says. Um, I love all the Luke Skywalker stuff about that movie. All the other stuff about that movie, maybe, besides the throne room scene, maybe not so great. Maybe, I can't do it by not so hot. I'll admit it. Laura Dern, I can take off my nostalgia goggles revolving around Jurassic Park and say that, yeah, she's not really a great character at all. But Dragon Andor, I think for me has just been, I don't know, like with Mando, I really like individual episodes of Mando, and I like Mando overall as a show. But I gotta say, I think Andor is basically like Andor is the closest thing that Disney Plus has gotten to prestige television so far. Like this is the closest thing that we've come to an Albuquerque verse style show within the Star Wars or Marvel, Disney Plus streaming shows. I am pretty much blown away by this thing. It's among my favorite pieces of Star Wars media. Luthen might be my new, just all time favorite Star Wars character, period. Sorry, 3PO. um, so yeah, I don't know. We're gonna go by this arc by arc. So, Dragon, what do you think of it?
Yeah, so I think, going into Andor, it was sort of a gamble because it was so late to the party in terms of like, hey, Andor's announced, and like, hey, we are kind of riding high on Rogue One, but then many years go by. By that point, it's like, oh, well, yeah, we're still doing that Andor show after we've
Mhm.
kind of blown away by other stuff or being wrapped up in other stuff. And mainly I was going into this like for I love Diego Luna, and now for me I'm always intrigued by Star Wars and kind of the 3.5 setting, if you will, kind of like the in between New Hope and Revenge of the Sith. It's very much like the beginnings of Vader's sort of story. Well, not just Vader, but it's kind of that little framework. And that's really all I was going into this with. And I remember the trailers did not really sell me. They just looked like, well, we're just very vaguely Star Wars. That really like a big hook there outside of again what I just said. So the marketing did not quite hype me up, but I think the end result is this was better than I think a lot of people feared. It may or may not be, and it leaned into aspects of Star Wars, that has not really, leaned into before. We haven't really gone there before, which I think was in its favor. But I got to be honest, Tiki, I'm a little flummoxed by the praise in terms of I'm mixed on it in the regard of I thought the pacing was not good. I really didn't like the pacing of this, and I think it really overcorrected from Book of Boba Fett that with the 12 episodes. And I don't know how much of that's like just in giving it 12 episodes, or how much of that's week to week may have really done irreparable damage to this for me. It's like personally for me, I think it's crazy talk. People saying like, this is like better than Mando, and it's like I think it's a recency bias. I really do. I will give it credit. It is refreshing. I think it is a step in the right direction
Mando
for me.
feels like a product. This feels like art. That's how I'm coming down on it,
I
honestly. Like
I
to be
mean,
point
maybe, but
blank.
I think comparing to the Albuquerque versus Real, I don't buy that at all, Tiki. That's this. I think that's too high praise you're giving it there. I'm not saying, look, there is a lot of great stuff in this. I will not take, there's a lot of really good stuff here. And again, I see what they're doing story wise. That is working. I just think this thing really could have been streamlined a bit, or at the very least, I think some people would point out, had this been released in arcs, I think it may have been more
I
digestible and
think
maybe
that
that.
would have been probably the gameplay, probably the game plan that would have
Because
really worked.
I mean, ultimately, that's
Release
really
this over a month, with those arcs in mind. Yeah.
because ultimately that's why I'm mixed on this because I think there's a lot that happens, and I just don't think it's quite as. I don't think
You didn't binge it, did you? You went week by week.
yeah, I was there pretty much. I mean, I binged
I binged
essentially.
it, Dragon. That's the difference. I mean,
Well,
I could pretty much tell, they released the first 3 episodes, and I could pretty much tell that's how this show was gonna go. And so honestly, I feel like that's why I'm having a much stronger reaction to it, is that I really did just take the time to just go through it in about a day and a half. And man, that's why I am saying the Albuquerque versus comparisons. I really don't think they're unfounded. I think all the pieces of this story really tie together in a way that Star Wars stories just usually don't. And I feel like it is in the intricacies of the mundanities of the show that we get some of the stronger points of it. But we'll go through
yeah,
it.
well, even with all that factored in, TK, I do think there's some mundanity versus monotony, but we'll get into that. So yeah,
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you on all of that. I definitely think there is some slow sections to this, so
yeah,
it'll be an interesting discussion.
yeah.
All right. Anyways, we have Peregron in the comments here saying, "Glad to see y'all doing this. Andor is an absolute masterpiece. The more people talk about it, the better." Indeed. But honestly, Jack, I'm kind of glad that we're kind of having this divide of opinion, because it always keeps the conversation somewhat fresh. So I'm welcome to I'm welcome to the engagement here. All right, should we just jump right into the arcs?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So the first arc would be the recruitment. Let me get that color to the Disney Plus blue as well. Um, Now, Dragon, I am of two minds of this, because I do think it was smart of Disney Plus to come out with these 3 episodes essentially as like the pilot movie of Andor. That's kind of how I look at it. And for me, what's really essential about these 3 episodes, especially looking back on it, is it really establishes the location and the culture of Phoenix. And Phoenix is going to be a very big driving force of the show. And, honestly, I feel like watching back, because
Tiki, isn't it Ferrex?
I think you're right. I think you're right. It is Ferrex. I'm sorry. I think I'm thinking of
You're thinking of Fennec Shand,
I am thinking of Phoenix.
Who's Ming Na Wen's character from
You're right. I
Mando.
am thinking of that. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ferrex. Ferrex. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you for the correction, Dragon. Thank you.
Anyway, so the point being, you're saying we flush out Ferrex.
I like, even stuff is down to like, I think honestly one of my favorite shots in the whole show is just the gloves, Dragon. The work gloves on that big wall. I don't know, just stuff like that is all throughout. It's like, the first 3 episodes, it's not action central by any means, but it doesn't need to be. For me, it establishes a lot of characters and gives them just enough to where we want to see more of them. Um, let's first talk about the inciting incident here, because I really do think the inciting incident is basically just a couple of stormtroopers getting killed, and these people are even lower than stormtroopers. They're basically security guards. They're basically space cops.
Yeah. So honestly, the thing for me though, the inciting incident for me was the big like, okay, this show is going to be better than I think a lot of us were fearing it was going to be, in terms of like it had a very noir intro
Uh-huh.
to Cassian, which I thought was really cool. I love like the honestly aesthetically the show is very beautiful. I will absolutely give it that in terms of like our visualization of the sets and everything, particularly the prison, but we'll get there. But even this, like the noir kind of like gunning him down the ring. What I love most about this is how it parallels our introduction to Cassian Andor in Rogue One, where he
Mhm.
does something similar. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but essentially it's him kind of coldly gunning someone down. Only in this case, it's a lot more kind of like there it's instinctual. Here, there's some hesitancy, and you see the intensity of the moment he kills these Corpo guys. And the Corpo guys essentially are, if I understood correctly, they are planets have guards that essentially like we're going to fight Imperial control, not in a sense like we're rebelling against the Empire, but in the sense like no, we can do our jobs. We don't need like the government to do our jobs for us. So it's kind of a small town mentality, one could say. And I believe at least that was my read on. I could be wrong about that. I was a missing sign between because they weren't wearing Imperial uniforms, but they were security guys of some variety and corrupt security guys.
So what I was getting at is I really appreciate how the inciting incident is so small, and it's something that like I feel like a lot of other Star Wars stories would just kind of like pass over of like, oh, there's these two security guys that are in the way. Bam, bam, they're dead. All right. Instead, we use that as like the catalyst for pretty much everything, and that's what I really like about this show. And Dragon, that's honestly where, for me, where the biggest Albuquerque. I know we're not going to see eye to eye on this Albuquerque verse thing, so I'm not going to hammer on.
Tiki, the most I'm going to give you with the Albuquerque verse thing is a yes in terms of the small inciting event that does have
that does balloon out of control. Yeah,
that is as much as I'm going to give you. But to broadly say the whole show is on the same tier as the Albuquerque verse, I think is just parenthetical.
I'm not saying the whole show is on the same tier.
Well, you led me to believe that earlier in your statements. That's why I'm
Dragon. I literally said it's the closest thing that Disney Plus has come to the Albuquerque verse. I'm not
that's
saying,
what I mean. You're saying it's
okay, but saying it's, but you're misquoting me here though. Me saying that it's the closest thing that Disney Plus has come to the Albuquerque verse does not equate to me saying that this is as good as the Albuquerque verse. I'm sorry, you're just misquoting.
Well, by Disney Plus's standards, even so, I mean, do you really? Okay, well, anyway.
All right.
Anyway, so so we have this inciting incident that basically is very much like I got to get out of town sort of thing. Now here's something that did bother me though. We kind of dropped the whole find the sister plot line very noticeably. I felt.
You know what? That is definitely one thing that I will agree with you on. I do think that the flashbacks. What I like about the flashbacks, Dragon, and this kind of ties into why I called this arc the recruitment, is I like how the flashbacks mirror Cassian's experience, like, because this whole first 3 episodes is more or less boils down to Luthen recruiting Cassian by the end of it.
Yeah.
And so we're mirroring that with Cassian getting recruited by Marva in a different sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
So I really do like that mirroring, but I will agree that the sister plot line does get dropped like a lead balloon as we go forward.
It's kind of hard because it was such a good sell of like what led, because it's connected to the inciting incident. That's why he's there. And like, oh yeah, why is he there? Oh, we don't need to worry about that. We're going to focus on better things. Well, yeah, well, why have the sister? Why can't we just have him like going around or doing something then? Because it works so well and what gets us to the prison. We couldn't do that there. Just him like.
No, I hear you.
So speaking of which, Marva, played by the great Fiona Shaw. Now Tiki is well known for she has a role on Killing Eve.
Okay.
So it's kind of like I knew this lady from somewhere. Of course, looked into it. Like, oh my god, it's her.
Yeah, I like. Let's just. I don't know. I just feel like. I feel like Ferrix is just Ed's location, and Marva is kind of like the breathing, sort of hardened center of it all. It's so layered, Dragon. I really do love the location. Like, it's basically like the working man's Star Wars planet, essentially, is how I read it as. It's kind of like, you know what I mean? It's almost kind of like a factory planet in some ways, but not really. I don't know, not really factory. It's almost like Tatooine, but more of a workforce type of vibe.
Well, it's like a steel mill planet.
Right. And I love the culture. I love the bell ringer. I mean, that dude's a standout. I feel like that dude's about as memorable as like the Mad Max Fury Road guitar player in some ways.
Well, he does get to kick a stormtrooper off a bell
That's
tower.
what I'm saying. Yeah. So I don't know, just all these little things. I will say that the side characters are, it's a little slow to get into them. I think that Marva and BMO or B, or I'm sorry, what's the droid's name? She just calls B most of the time.
Well, that's the thing. They call him B. I think his full name is like B2EMO, so it's kind of BMO.
I think they do call him BMO, right?
Well, I don't know. It's like the
That's
full
not
name
just
is.
the Adventure Time character, because I know BMO is also an Adventure Time
Well, I'm just
character.
saying the full name is B2EMO, and I think
Uh,
they call him B for short. So I don't know.
all right. Anyways, so those two, like, I mean, the droid especially, like B is just like one of the best Star Wars droids, just as far as just empathy,
Tiki,
man.
wait a
Like,
minute. Did you just ask me who's B?
yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah. So, but the point is, though, BMO is kind of is a great
He
addition.
is a
Very
I
nice.
mean, Star Wars. I feel like Disney Star Wars, with the exception of Solo, has kind of excelled at droids. That's one thing they have been consistently good at.
Yeah, I mean, BMO, B2MO here. He's I love that. I love that he factors into the big payoff with Marv at the very end. So he has a very crucial role ultimately.
He feels like Cassian's little brother, and I find that
Yeah,
adorable.
yeah, it's nice. And of course, it's knowing Cassian does build a bond with a droid in Rogue One. That's kind of it's a nice little thread. They kind of like yeah.
Let's see.
We have very limited aliens in this show. We have like
Mhm.
three tops, and one of them is Vetch in the first episode, who's like this big kind of that. The Vetch gag was really funny though. When Vetch is like shown to intimidate, he's very nice and kindly though. He's not intimidating at all to Cassian.
Um, I do really, really like the Cassian. I'm sorry, Dragon. I'm totally blanking on his name, but Cassian's like buddy.
Well, I mean, there's Bix and there's Tim who betrays him. I
The
think
other guy.
that's the thing. I'm blanking on the other guy as well, T, because that's the thing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm telling you, the
God.
unfortunate thing of the show, T, is they're populating with a lot of characters, and a number of them are kind of like they're either one and done or something. I don't know.
No, I hear you, but I do feel like this guy, he does come back into play in the later half of the season, and
Oh
he.
wait, we'll just call him Beardy. That guy, Beardy.
All right, fine. Oh God, I'm sorry, guys. Anyone that's in the chat know who I'm talking about.
But it is the bearded guy, right?
Yes,
The
yes.
bearded friend who, right.
I'm literally trying to look through the. Oh, it's frustrating. This is really frustrating. It's not.
Oh, it's Brazo, isn't it?
Brazo. That's it. That's it. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yes, so Brazo.
God.
Yeah, it's easy to remember that because that's Steve Martin's name, and he and Only Murders in the
All
Building
right.
too.
Thank you, Paragron. God, I hate when I blank on stuff like that. Anyways, Brazo, I think, is a really good kind of like representation of the everyman. He's just a guy who's got the 9 to 5, and he's trying to do the best he can. He doesn't necessarily like the Empire, but he's trying to keep his head down about it. And Dragon, let's just talk about the Empire's presence within the show, because I really do think that is the big strong point. Like Andor was kind of the selling point, but I feel like the selling point should have been just this show really gives you the eye on the ground, most average civilian perspective of just how tyrannical and evil the Empire can be.
Well, also, so here's the thing. So this is where I'm getting into the whole kind of mundanity versus monotony here, where the Empire leans into mundanity, which I do like in terms of like the Empire is really the whole it's a bureaucracy of sorts here, where it's like this is where the chink in the armor is ultimately for the Empire. This
Uh-huh.
is why they always underestimate their enemy. It's it's the ants thing. It's the whole like ultimately what's the undoing of the Empire. Every movie and every way you slice it, they're always underestimating the little guy, and of course the little guy outnumbers them. It's very much like the ants in A Bug's Life. And that's very much what happens here. Like they were vastly outnumbered, and they thought they could, control them with fear and everything. That's what happens with the Ewoks, essentially, too. They underestimate the Ewoks.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, yes, the fact that we see these guys just very much like, okay, yeah, we're just going to run the numbers, and we don't want to acknowledge that there's any problems, and it's so we're gonna glaze over this and just churn out the numbers, and if people raise questions, we kill them off. That's pretty much our the way we operate.
And it's really fascinating to me because right from the get-go, right from the very get-go, it's not like Lucas was trying to hide the fascist undertones of the stormtroopers and everything. Like it
Yep.
was very upfront. Like even me as a little kid watching these movies with no historical context, I could still like understand the gravity of the imagery that they were going for. But this is the first time like we really see it put into practice, and it is cold and it's calculated, and like you said, Dragon, it's very bureaucratic. And I don't know. I mean, I really think this series is going to be because one thing we haven't hit on, and that Paragon did kind of mention in his comments, is that the show is, it was underviewed, and I really think a big part of that is just like I myself, like Dragon, I kid you not, I literally gave up on the Obi-Wan show once I realized that the kid Princess Leia was going to be like a main component to it. I still haven't gone back and watched it. I noped the hell out of that show as soon as I realized that she was going to be a main character. Because I just did not feel like watching Princess Leia escort mission the show. But I'm sure there's some good Vader stuff in there, and I'm sure that, one of these days I'll watch like a compilation of the Vader stuff or something, but
the very least, you got to watch episode 5 and then the Vader stuff.
And then, of course, Book of Boba Fett was just, I mean, the Mando episodes were decent Mando episodes, but that show conceptually was just a turd. So,
well, again,
so the big thing about the show is, and like you said, we're coming off of, I don't know, I really feel like they should have advertised this show less on the basis of like, oh, it's the origin story to the guy in Rogue One that we know dies anyway, and more on like, this is the ground level of what it's like to be under the Empire rule. Because I really think that is
basically what they should have done is they should have advertised the rebellion instead of Cassian Andor. That's really what they do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they already have a show called Rebels, so they couldn't just do it again. This is the show Rebels.
All right, let's see. Peregrine says, my favorite part of how the Empire was represented was how it was given a face. It wasn't just masked, faceless soldiers, but it showed that fascism is real. People grappling for power. Yeah,
it's a broad spectrum. This first arc, what it delivers to us here is, we kind of, it fills us in on the origin of Cassian Andor with the flashbacks, and we have how we end on Luthen's offer, and then of course we have. The big thing we have too, we haven't gotten to yet, is Karn. We got to talk about Karn. Karn again fits into kind of the Empire bureaucracy thing. Is that he basically? I'm sure you're going to appreciate this comparison. The biggest vibe I get off of Karn is he's Tyrell Welk in Star Wars.
Totally.
Essentially, that's who Karn is. But again, I like the idea that, again, assuming my read,
I feel like a little less unhinged and more just pathetic. But yeah, I see it.
So that's the thing with Karn. My read on, assuming it is correct here, is that he's these middle management, and he's basically he feels that he failed in his job, which is what brought the Empire there, because he made a stink about like, our guys are killed. We gotta report this in. And doing so, it's like, well, yeah, you're fired because you made us look bad, and now the Empire's here, basically taking our jobs, so we don't like you anymore. And he kind of like, after that point,
how awesome is that one lieutenant character though?
You mean
the guy with the Scottish accent?
Yeah, that guy. I think it's like Moss or something. But yeah,
I don't know, Dragon. That's the thing. It's like you did mention that this show does have a lot of one-off characters like that.
Well, the Moss came back. The Moss was kind of
he did. But I feel like even if he didn't come back, I feel like just his presence in those couple of episodes he was there, man, he really like, I don't know. There was just so much character with him. Just in the brief time we saw him. And I feel like pretty much, Dragon, I do want to mention there is one character in particular that I was not, like, throughout the whole season, I wasn't really crazy about, but I want to get into that shortly. But yeah, with most everyone else, I was pretty on board for their, like, from the smallest people who would just show up in 1 or 2 episodes, to the broad spectrum people who were, the people like Karn who had like the season wide arcs. Yeah.
I mean, there's the thing, just with Karn, I feel for him because he he's basically he's seeing the empire as something he just wants to do. Really, he's trying to uphold the standards of the empire, and he feels he's being punished for this. And we have a very kind of like, we build up like the fugitive-esque encounter with him and Cassian Andor, and the fact that he's pursuing him, he's going after him, which is basically that's leading to ultimately the spark of rebellion and everything with the Cassian story, and leading to the funeral and such, making this guy a blip on the screen. So he's the domino that knocks the other one over, because he's a dog with a bone going after Andor.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I love this, the fact that we kind of take this guy to a realistically pathetic level where I love showing the human side of the Empire. I've always loved doing this with the Stormtroopers. Like, we kind of gleamed a little bit in Mando, and we've kind of gotten here and there. It's always just the idea of like, we could have done majorly with The Force Awakens, which after that movie we did not really do any more of. Just the idea of like a little kind of a sympathetic light here, like this guy, after he gets fired, essentially he's he's drinking cereal with.
He just gets like the most hardcore drilling from a mother in all of Star Wars Dragon.
Of course, the coolest thing about
You pathetic piece of shit. You're such a disappointment to your Uncle Harpo.
Oh my god, Dragon. Again, that lady is like another one of those like one-off characters where it's like she isn't in a lot of the show, but like her presence is very, very memorable.
I mean, the coolest, honestly, it's the littlest detail is my favorite with Karn, is the fact that he's like having breakfast with her and he's having like blue milk in the cereal.
Yeah, he has to have the blue milk, and the blue milk is like a symbol of of kind of like a lower class for him almost.
Yep.
Oh,
You
also,
piece of shit.
I love his mother. I really do.
Now this comes later, but I just love the fact when he does get kind of like the clerical job, when he's like in the kind of the space cubicle. I love that. I love the design theory on the ties in Star Wars. That's like a belt, like a little like a little seat belt sort of thing, like kind of built into the attire. It's really
right.
It's like we've never seen clerical work in Star Wars outside like military clerical work. It's like, no, it's like essentially the office job of Star Wars. You go in there, you go into like a little kind of hexagonal cube thing, and yeah. All right, so I mean, in general though, it's just the flashback stuff. So we learn that Cassian does kind of have like a tribal kind of backstory on Kanari, it seems, and he was separated from his sister, and they were bombarded by the Republic, and I believe this during the 3.5 space, and this is Cassian 10 years later, I think. Not sure.
But, sounds about right.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, and of course then he meets Luthen there, and of course played by the wonderful Stellan Skarsgård, who does an excellent job in the show. He's very much a highlight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Perhaps we should transition. Let's
one thing. With the characters, Dragon, I do want to bring up Bix is the character I was kind of referring to, where she has some harrowing things happen to her. I just never really got that big of a grasp on her personality.
Yeah, that's the thing. Bix, Tiki, honestly, this is what I'm talking about. I think the pacing is really detrimental to the show, in which we cut away from the legit good storytelling that we're doing. I think our subplots, for the most part,
I feel like, okay, I'll meet you halfway here. I feel like the subplots aren't great, but they are necessary to get us to a really awesome last couple episodes.
At the very least, the subplots are very glacial. I mean, they're either like Bix. Let's face it, Bix is purely there to be a damsel in distress. All right, there's literally Bix does nothing aside from that, but everything else.
Bix, I think, is kind of she's the weakest character in the show. I think. I think one of the problems I have with her is like it's yet another strong-willed brunette character. It's basically like the third Rey / Jyn Erso clone that we've gotten. Mm-hmm. It's just personality-wise, it's very similar. And maybe what they're trying to do with her is they're trying to like have it be like, Cassian kind of sees a little bit of Bix in Jyn Erso when he meets her. I assume that's what they're going for with it. But yeah, I mean, Dragon, it's kind of frustrating to me because I've seen a lot of people online being like, "Oh, Bix is such a such a strong character for being able to survive that torture. I'm like, you're not wrong in that sense that, it is, I think it's admirable where they do show her kind of like, they show the actual ramifications, the actual mental ramifications of the torture. But you're right. I literally feel like her whole storyline is just like, oh, we got to rescue her. All right. So yes. And just before we get into it, we have to talk, before we get into the next part, we have to talk just Luthen as a character, Dragon, because Luthen to me is, I don't know, like he is absolutely just everything about the show. Like for me, he's the big defining force of it that really makes it stand out and really makes it what it is. And we get that pretty early on with him. But also, Dragon, I will admit, with the glacial pacing, Mon Mothma scenes.
Yeah, I was going to dig my heels in there, but she doesn't really enter until the next arc.
That's fair. Let's jump into it then. The heist, episodes 4 through 6.
So I guess just to get through the Mothma model. So here's the thing. When she showed up, I was initially
Dragon, I'm sorry. I need to make a joke. 1 second. You know what I thought of every time that Mon Mothma showed up on screen?
What?
I thought of the Red Letter Media. Mon Mothma's back.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So with the Mon Mothma also, when she showed up initially, I was like excited, like, "Hey, Mon Mothma! We never do enough with Mon Mothma," and she obviously factored in the Rogue One. This is a good call. Let's bring her in. Let's see what she's gonna do. And again, initially, I was thinking, okay, some mundanity with Mon Mothma, which then, assumedly, will get rather, we'll get dialed into things. And it's like, well, not exactly. Really dialed into things. Like we're going to spend a lot of time on her failing marriage and her strained relationship with her daughter, and the fact she's kind of playing both sides of the fence.
I honestly do think that all pays off. I do. I just think I agree with you as far as the pacing goes, that it takes a long time to get to where we need it to go.
I mean, honestly, this feels like they kind of made a decision of like, okay, so do we want to kind of somewhat parallel her with Cassie? And that one of the coolest things with the Cassie and Andor story is that he doesn't go from rebel to from the kind of loner to rebel like instantly overnight. It takes the whole season, which is a good call. My assumption is that perhaps that's where we're going with Mon Mothma. Only I don't know. It part of me makes me. They made the choice between okay, we're gonna show the transition, show how difficult it is, or should we just have her be like, hey, I'm on our side, man. Or it just feels like I don't know. It just really felt drawn out in terms of like maybe we should have just gone the route. She's already on the side of on Luthen, but maybe having a tough time with it. Instead, it was like, oh no, I don't know which side to go with because I don't see what she's fighting for because her family seems not great. It seems like she's making a sacrifice at the end. Like I've put my daughter essentially into an arranged marriage to help the rebellion for the greater good. But like I don't really see that as a sacrifice.
No, I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I think with her and where it pays off for me is the fact that she is willing to be so cold-blooded about like, okay, well, if my daughter isn't going to respect me and if she's into this whole culture anyways, then fuck it. That to me is what I read it as. I didn't read it as like, oh my God, she has to make this hard choice. It's more of like, like this is the cost. Like, and the cost is kind of like the whole theme of the show. It's obviously much better represented with Luthen and Luthen's speech, and we'll get to Luthen's speech.
This is a bad comparison, but it feels like we're doing like kind of the Diet Shasta Cola version of House of Cards with Mon Mothma. It's just not landing on for me. I don't know. It feels like
my favorite part of the Mon Mothma stuff is the payoff with her. I do like the anxiety of kind of like I don't know. For me, I felt kind of like the gradual rising tension of her getting in over her head and not having a way out. Like I did feel the tension of that. I agree that it was a little bit too long paced out. For me, the biggest payoff with her and why I did ultimately enjoy her story was I really thought it was super clever how she just threw her husband just ass backwards under the bus with those gambling accusations. I think it was like a freaking killer. Like, I mean, Dragon.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. That moment's like the House of Cards payoff, but it's just I don't really care about the family. Like it seems like she doesn't. Right. That's the problem, though.
No, I mean, I hear you. Like I said, I don't necessarily think we're supposed to care about the family. The family doesn't factor into anything in the movies. I think the family is literally supposed to be represented as political bargaining chips, and that to me is kind of the point.
Well, I'm not even saying we need to really get to know the family a whole bunch. It just feels like, I mean, does it really matter though if it's like, she doesn't really seem really perturbed by this at all. If I'm being honest, just seems, I don't know. It seems like, yeah, I threw him under the bus. It's like, man, that's really.
I mean, like I said, to me, I think it mirrors Luthen's whole thing of like, she's shedding any sort of a hope for she might be in a bad place with her family, but by doing what she does in the in the finale, she's really shedding all hope of ever fixing any sort of family issue she might have had. She's basically serving her daughter up on a silver platter. She, obviously her husband is the one thing where it's like, I feel like her husband, like I said, I feel like it's a cheer-worthy moment to throw that dude under the bus, because that dude was a prick anyways.
I mean, honestly, the only thing I really cared about with Mon Mothma that really had any weight to me was when we saw the Senate, the Senate hearings, when it was like kind of like the lost cause of that, and she was kind of carrying a flame for that. Like that was like the one where I was like, okay, this is what I need from Mon Mothma. Then we're going back to the family stuff.
I hear you. Okay, well, I think I agree with you on the slowness. I just disagree on like, I do think the payoff was, I don't know if I would say worth it, but it was satisfying to me. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about the actual heist though.
Yeah, so the heist is good. This is the strength of the show is again kind of the natural progression for Cassian, in which again he has kind of a more serialized version of the Han Solo arc in A New Hope, if you really boil it down, where it's like, he's a loner, he's a cool guy, and he ends up like, I'm not sticking around. Like, okay, Yahoo, I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna take out Vader. Yeah, well then you go on, kid, blow this thing home. So again, it's kind of a more kind of like a a realistically kind of paced version of that. So that's with the whole season long arc. That's rather good.
I will say I think episode 4 is probably the slowest episode of the whole show.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's weird because honestly, at the start of these arcs is when we kind of hit a slow point. If you really think about it, you have 4, and then you have 7. 4 and 7 are kind of like slow getting us to the good stuff. I mean, admittedly, though, like when he's walking to the camp, we have like, okay, so the risk of like TIE fighters, kind of like flying in, you got to hide. Like that's really cool. And then seeing how well plotted this heist is, and of course putting that into practice. In the next episode gets more exciting with the whole there's doubts and paranoia, like Cassian's hiding the fact that he was brought on by
Right.
Luton, and that even that though, it's still when you look back on it, it does feel like, yeah, that was rather like, why did that need to be a secret? Because,
my whole thing is, I just think this kind of illustrates how these episodes should have probably been broken up into arcs and released in arcs.
Because obviously the heist would have been a lot stronger as
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, I feel like episode 6 is probably like everyone's second favorite episode after episode 10. And for good reason. But and I do think that episode 5, I see what you're saying. I don't know. I honestly think that we could have, like, episodes 4 and 5 almost could have been one episode, just the tension before the heist and then the heist itself. I don't know.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying, Tiki. Honestly, it just feels like I'm not just trying to fully isolate this subplot, but it just feels like we have action going on, and then we kind of cut away to either preparation for, which I'm not knocking the preparation, but
the heist preparation was the part of the show that I did feel like it was the most like, okay, like this is like, all right, let's speed things up here, guys. Come on.
What I mean is, like, we cut away to something like, like the Mon Mothma stuff. It's like, the fact is that how we intercut it just feels like we're cutting away from, like, for example, we get to one of my favorite arcs in the thing. It's like, I'm so locked into this arc, and then Mon Mothma. It's like, can we just go back to the arc? Or Bix. I don't need to know about Bix. How do you feel about Miro? How do you feel about Deidre Miro, the Imperial lady who?
I like her. I really do. I think she and yeah, they form a really good kind of dynamic, a really awkward sort of weird dynamic that's
Yeah.
compelling.
Like they both actually care about the cause, and then they're
Mhm.
both kind of oddly drawn to each other in a sense. Yeah.
So yeah, I do like that. I think she represents like a genuine threat, but at the same time, it's like you kind of almost want to see her succeed just because of how good at her job she is compared to everyone else.
Yeah. So also I want to mention too, I do like I do like the band of misfits that Cassian is paired up with for this heist. I do like them, even though unfortunately they are really hard to call to mind because again they are in essence in
I
the
feel
grand
like they're
scheme.
the best example of where I am kind of mixed on the show's characters somewhat, where a lot of them do have really interesting personalities, right? Like we do have the one guy who's like the ex stormtrooper.
Mhm.
We have the kid who's kind of like the starry-eyed freedom fighter. We have the guy who's essentially Woody Harrelson's character from Solo, the everyman for himself kind of guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, so yeah, we do. And Val, I do think is actually Dragon. I actually think Val is more interesting than Mon Mothma herself. Like I actually, I really enjoyed Val's character arc throughout.
Yeah.
She was one of the surprises of this arc that she carried through to the later parts of the season and was compelling all the way through.
I gotta admit, Vel to me lost a little momentum after the heist stuff, but that's just me.
I mean, to me, I just enjoyed the fact that she was still in the mix. I feel like she added a little bit of continuity to everything. Where I don't know, I just like she's not. Obviously she's not going to be as strong-willed of a character because she's not in the middle of the crisis and the heist, but I just like the fact that we carry her over and do stuff with her.
Something I really did like from the heist was I love the messy end of it all here, where Cassian they succeed by the skin of their teeth. Cassian he kills the traitor of the group, who is basically gonna he's basically wants to like takes most of the payout from the garrison heist. And Cassian ends up he kills him, and of course, in explaining the situation, he basically has to take his payment by force.
Mhm.
Yeah. And again, we show that it's not an easy transition to the rebellion. Like again, this kind of a wake up call of like, yeah, I mean, the rebellion though it's not exactly the fully noble cause that Cassian's gonna like sign up for later. He hasn't really seen it firsthand on the receiving end, at least not until next episode. He's not on the receiving end of why we need a rebellion.
Yeah, yeah.
So then brings us to unless you have anything else you want to say on the heist.
Nope.
Brings us to my favorite arc. Brings us
It's everyone's favorite arc, and for good
Yeah.
reason.
Yes. Oh god, I love the prison arc so much.
I have 2 words, Dragon. I have 2 words.
Yeah.
Kino Loy.
Kino Loy.
Oh my god. Oh, Andy Serkis just came in. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Cassian, but it's my show now."
Of course, it's very funny given that Andy Serkis has also been in The Last Jedi.
Yes.
So,
Well, yeah, the prison. All of this stuff, Dragon. It is elite Star Wars storytelling. It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I feel like it's up there with. Do you think Cinta killed the hostages? I don't know. That's a good question. What do you think? I don't think so.
I don't think so either, personally, but I don't know.
Okay, so yeah, this prison stuff. First of all, I really like everything leading up to it. I like how Cassian is trying to get Marva out of Dodge, and she's being stubborn about it, and I like how that all leads into the finale. Again, Dragon, it's kind of like the building stuff up to get to the big moment in the finale that we need to get to.
You see, what he should have done is say, "We're a family."
Oh my god!
And then, of course, it would have been like a pause and like him looking at his actions, and he would have run off and taking a barrel with him. Anyway,
and what I really, really dig about the prison stuff, what I think is one of the things that low key helps it be as compelling as it is like in any other. I feel like in most other shows, they would have taken the route of like, okay, the Empire is now completely on the run for anyone involved in the heist. And of course, Cassian gets picked up for that. But no, Cassian gets picked up just for literally being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, Dragon, this kind of thing has literally happened to people where people will be at the wrong place at the wrong time for like they will like be in the middle of riots, not even involved in the riots, and they will get put into prison. And I mean, it's hauntingly accurate to how our actual legal system works.
And of course, the irony that he is taken in essentially by a K2SO droid.
At first, I thought it was literally K2SO.
Yeah, for a moment,
but
again, it's would have been too small a world. But yeah, that's.
You know what, Dragon? I actually really dig, because I would have bet money on K2SO being basically the cliffhanger of this season, and I give them a lot of respect for not just because if they wanted to, they could have had a little tag at the end of that face off with Luthen, like, all right, well, if you're part of the team now, I guess you need to meet my partner. Come out, K2. You know what I mean? It would have been so easy for them to do that. It really would have been.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Other things, Cassian's arrested pretty much like on suspicion and profiling, and he's given not 6 months, but 6 years.
And that whole thing just really hits home. Before we even get to the prison, I mean, it's brutal, man.
And again, Diego Luna is doing some really great acting here, just like the outrage and the shock of like what's happening to him in this situation.
And the prison itself, man, it is legitimately like one of the most haunting sci-fi prisons. It really does. A lot of people pointed this out, and I agree. It harkens all the way back to THX 1138.
There's definitely layers of that in there, sure.
Like, we are going all the way back to the roots of Lucas with this shit.
Yeah. So yeah, I love that. We have Andy Serkis as Kino Low. He's like a pod boss. Essentially, pod boss is like the criminal in charge in the prison who answers to the Empire and in the Imperial Guards in this case. In Narkina 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that this is the absolute root of Cassian seeing the point in Rebellion, just seeing how much of a raw deal he got, and then of course seeing firsthand the middle episode, the episode 8. Wait, 7, 8, episode. Oh wait, is it 4 episodes? Yeah, it is 4 episodes.
It is 4. Well, it's the prison. It's funny because the prison itself is like a 3-episode run, and then you have that one episode where he goes back to Ferrix to try and recruit Marva, and then gets arrested at the end of that episode.
Well, the point being, in the middle, the episode called "No One's Listening," that one. That's where things really get super interesting. Where we kill poor Olaf, I believe his name is. We kill the poor old guy, and we learn that they fried they did like the little electrical floor thing, and they fried the whole cell block 2 of.
I mean, how brutal is the electrical floor thing, man? And I love how this system, this whole prison system.
I love the prison cells. I love the fact that it's open and they can all talk to each other. But it's like the old kid logic of like, the floor is hot lava. It's
You know what's funny is that a lot of people had pointed out that the cells actually look like the Galactic Star Cruiser rooms with how like confined they are.
It's a good I didn't think about that. It's funny. Yeah, but yeah, I just love the fact that was very much like a wake call, and I love the tragic button that we have at the end of all of this. We reveal what they are making in the prison.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of tragic buttons. Of course, Andy Serkis's fate is one of those that we'll get into. But yeah, definitely, like the fact that like Cassian is like actively building the thing that will
kills
lead
him
to his death. Yeah,
just the fact that again, like they're building the fire, essentially the firing pin, or at least like the chamber, the barrel, if you will, what you want to call it, the laser grid of the Death Star, which also kind of I mean. I forget if the exhaust port is literally in the center of the Death Star or not. I forget if it's like the laser point. The point being, I know we have the exhaust port there somewhere. Anyway, the point being that he's involved in the building of that thing. But again, it's like it's kind of a cross between kind of prison construction and very much what happened during Auschwitz, where they would have the poor prisoners be building munitions that would kill their own kind.
Right.
Which is horrifying. So there's very similar again with the whole fascism and the Nazism parallels with the Empire and Star Wars. It's very fits into that very very like a glove. But also, again, the fact that Kino is very much like all business because I just want to do this, serve my time, and get out of here. I only have like 9 days or something left.
It's such a great kind of chipping away at the because you think when the story arc first starts, you think that he is going to be the main obstacle.
Yeah, I think he's going to
And
get in the way.
instead he becomes like the heart and soul of, I would wager to say not just this arc, but Dragon, I would wager to say that his storyline is probably the almost like the thesis statement of the whole season in some ways.
Again, I will. Again, the prison arc is the most to me is the most important arc because again, that really gives the eyes open. Like,
I mean, it is the most important arc, Dragon. That it absolutely is. I don't think the writers would deny that.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely casting having his eyes open to why he needs to join the cause, and of course, obviously, Marva is really the one that actually sparks the flame. This gets him on board. At least this gives him this opens his eyes to it before they officially spark the flame. But yeah, it's the fact that the Empire isn't playing by the rules, and there's utterly evil, and anyone speaks out against it, we're just going to vaporize a whole fleet, and we're just going to bring in more guys, and they get the idea of well, we outnumber them. Let's just go after them. Let's fight back. Let's unelectrify the floors by getting into the grids, and let's do it. And of course, poor Kino, after he gets a big moment where he's actually in charge. Yeah, for a moment, initially
that is got to be one of the most all-time most iconic Andy Serkis line deliveries.
Initially I was really ticked off. We didn't check back on him. What happened? There you realize oh wait, yeah, if he can't swim, you'd imagine he'd have to. If it were you, would you take the plunge just to try and swim, or would you stick around?
I don't know, Dragon, and honestly, I really hope that the show never answers the question. I like it ambiguous.
Because I think the implication is that he did not jump, so his fate is left up to the Empire, which probably not going to end well.
Although, granted, the fact that season 2, and we'll get into this with, I don't want to do too much spec, but season 2, there is the thing with season 2 about every arc taking place. There's going to be a 5-year time jump, I think. I don't know if it's a 1-year time. It might be a 1-year time jump.
Well, that's the thing, Tiki. Remember, the whole show is 5 years before.
Okay, right. I'm sorry. So every arc in season 2 is going to have a 1-year time jump in between.
Where did you find that out?
So it is possible that we could have a situation where we see Kino years later, totally brainwashed by the Empire.
Yeah, they did the Bix thing on him.
Mm-hmm. If we see Kino in any way, I think it's going to be in that way.
Yeah.
But I honestly hope we just kind of leave it at that.
Honestly, I think it's leaving his fate ambiguous. Most likely, it's probably tragically he died because he couldn't swim. That's probably what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's talk.
And then, of course, we have to talk about Luthen's speech, Dragon, because the internet is going nuts about this for good reason.
All right.
I mean, goddamn, it is Luthen, to me, just in general, let's just get it out of the way. I think he is so compelling in so many different ways. At first you think it's just kind of the duality of oh, okay, he has to put on the the mask of being kind of the the eccentric antique dealer. But then I don't know, there's a lot of different moments for him. One of my favorite performances was that moment we get at the end of episode 6 where he gets the news that the heist was pulled off and he's just quietly rejoicing to himself. And all of that duality in the performance comes into the forefront with the dialogue in such a compelling way. And I don't know, man, I think this speech is going to be it's going to be up there with some of the most memorable moments in all of Star Wars. I think it really is just absolutely top level stuff.
Yeah, I mean, of course, with Skarsgård here, I love that he also gets to play the undercover, sort of the shopkeep, oh, hello, the jovial shop.
Exactly.
Being this world-weary guy who's giving everything for the rebellion, and he's he's basically, again, the idea is he's kind of Cassian's mentor, and he's very much what Cassian will turn into in Rogue One.
We know he ain't making it to Rogue One.
Exactly. So so seeing this guy, just like he knows he's not going to see the sunset. He knows he's not going to see the victory party.
It's one of those things where it's like, obviously, like I just said, we know he's pretty much guaranteed to die in season 2, and I am not looking forward to seeing him die.
Yeah. So also, I love that he interacts with Saw Gerrera. So that's something we also pay off in Rogue One. So we set
And
up.
I really like with Saw Gerrera, like with Rogue One, I feel like Saw Gerrera was honestly one of the characters that got the most screwed over by the by just chopping up that edit. And so I really do like how he represents kind of the messy beginnings of the rebellion, and how it was how there was a lot of infighting and pettiness and mistrust, and I really like that element that he brings into it.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, I think one of the best. I think Skarsgård's best scene in the whole show. Honestly, for me, I mean, I know that scene's great, what you mentioned, but I love him. Having his scene with Saul Guerrero, where he kind of points out, you could. You could do that. I'm giving you this information. And he's basically questioning, you're going to turn on your own inside guy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was really good. Just the boldness of what Skarsgård's doing in that scene. I really like that.
Right.
All right. So again, I guess that. Yes,
Yeah.
I suppose that brings us to the funeral.
Okay. At every occasion, I'll be ready for the funeral.
Yeah, so we kill. Sadly, Marva passes.
And I like how we don't really dwell on the how. We just dwell on the fact that it
No,
did
she was an old
happen.
lady. I don't really know that.
And also, I really like that we see all of the grieving through the droid's perspective. I really felt like that was a really good storytelling decision that they took with it.
Yeah, and also earlier we kind of glazed over this, but the death of her. I assume he was her husband, right? Like it wasn't just like her friend. Like that was her.
Tim,
Yeah. Well, no, not no. Tim was the wait. Wasn't I thought Tim was like was Bix's friend who turned on Cassie. I thought you meant the.
Oh no, I know who you were talking about. Yeah, I'm sorry. Clem.
Yeah, like we had that. Yeah. So and that's why he calls himself Clem later. So it's a little nod.
My
anyway,
bad,
the point being the city, like walking again. We build up the funeral, which she's walking through. I believe what do we call it, like Bix Street or something, or Bix something.
Hold on one second.
Like Rick's Road or something.
Rick's Road, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe it's the. I think the idea that's the same. That's what that road. Obviously, that's what the road's called, and that's the road where Clem got killed by the storm. By I guess the then clone troopers to then stormtroopers walking through the street, which is like a really good visual. And we had Cassian kind of seeing that haunting little memory of like him just being like a wrong place, wrong time sort of thing. Like, hey, we don't. Someone calling him out, and he was just kind of there, and he didn't balk at it, and he got gunned down by stormtroopers. So, so we go there again. We have this kind of like queen's funeral, if you will, where everyone's just kind of like populating the street. And again, we see our practical sets at play here, where there's packed to the rafters with ongoers.
Dragon, they honestly really should have just built this town as one of the Galaxy's Edge lands. Like I'm telling you, they really blew it with the Galaxy's Edge thing, where they really could have had each Galaxy's Edge be its own planet, and that way Disney would have had 4 sets just ready to go whenever they wanted to use them.
Yeah, probably.
Anyways.
Also, I just want to mention too, when Cassian is found after the prison break, real quick. I love that we had 2 very Jim Henson's Creature Shop looking aliens that found him with Hay and Freedy.
Indeed.
Yep. Anyway, yeah. So.
Oh wait! Also, that reminds me, Dragon. One of the things about the heist that I do want to cover is the Aldani.
Yeah.
I just really like the culture of that. It really gets into the nitty gritty of the Star Wars mythos. Of course, they're very much kind of like a Native American sort of parallel, but it's not as obvious as something like Avatar with the Native American parallels. It's and how awesome with the heist. Just really quick, I just want to get it in there because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. How awesome is that fireworks escape?
It's pretty good.
All right. I'm sorry. I just noticed, like, oh my god, firework escape. We have to talk about it.
I mean, I love the thing where we have, I believe, with Skarsgård in the ship when he had like kind of like little flare kind of charges going out there during that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so we have the funerals kind of back to the rafters, and we have this this great, the big two EMO moment where he projects, the kind of the last words.
I love the scale of the hologram.
Yeah, of course, big words, so we need a big hologram, and we have this great, basically the big rallying call to fight the Empire.
And this, to me, was like if you look back in the Star Wars history books, like this felt like the spark of the rebellion to me.
I mean, the coolest thing, is a very human thing, and again, this is always, I love how we kind of equivocate this, despite the fact that I think at times the show will kind of like, again, we'll kind of maybe drag or kind of go at a glacial pace in those moments. When we get something like this is great. And what we do in just a very simplistic view, and there is the very human view of it, is like, hey, the fatal flaw of the Empire is on full display, where it's all egos and just they need control. So like this lady's like saying, hey, fight the control, question your masters. And you have this one Imperial guy who's kind of run over and he's trying to cover, and then she's like half covered in shadow saying, fight the Empire, and he kicks throws poor B over, and it's like, just that's the temper of the Empire right there. Like, no, we give the orders.
Yeah, totally.
That's the flaw. That's why, again, it's the Empire is, again, seemingly this big imposing organization, all tidy and white and everything, and of course, with the Death Star being the operative kind of symbol of that. And what do? We there's like that one little flaw in that, a little crack in the armor, which is what destroys the Death Star, again personified through all the rank and file.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So where's that?
The one thing about the finale that I'm not crazy for, and I'm glad we're on the same page with this, is that like the big storyline.
Don't care.
Honestly, Dragon, I feel like the thing with Bix is that I feel like it's one of the things where this is the main thing where, like, we can go episodes without seeing her, right? And so we're just kind of like, oh yeah, Bix is still being tortured. All right.
Yeah, Bix is
and
still
it's just kind of the pacing of it. Like maybe if Bix would have been kidnapped like right as the funeral was taking place and she was being tortured as Cassian was trying to get to her, I think that probably would have had a bigger, a bigger urgency to it. You know what I mean? Whereas instead it just kind of feels like, oh yeah, we got to get that off the checklist of story things we need to wrap up.
Yeah.
So that is definitely the big thing with the finale that I wasn't crazy about. I will totally admit that.
Sure.
I will say though, the actress who plays Bix, she does play traumatized very well, in the aftermath. One of the things that got me is the fact that she was almost uneasy about leaving the cell because they'd be angry with her, even though Cassian's like reassuring her that, that the coast is clear. That got to me. So I do see what the torture stuff is trying to do, as far as like the actual like ramifications of it. Like,
I mean, to give credit where credit's due, the way she's tortured is pretty cool. It just seems like I don't really need any of this, really. I don't, because again,
I feel like we are gonna give her dimensions in season 2. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's setting things up. I feel like she's gonna be a character where we look back on and it's like, okay, like, I don't know. It's just, the show did place a weird emphasis on her without her storyline feeling necessary or tied up. So I gotta think they're doing, like, with how well crafted a lot of the rest of this story is, I gotta feel like they've got something going on with her that we'll see. Like I said, especially with the season 2 having that ambitious like year time jumps in between the arcs. But
so they've confirmed that that's what they're doing, right? Because I remember you going into this season thinking that's going to happen this season. That didn't happen at all. So you're sure about this?
That's the word, yeah.
All right, I don't know. All right, I hope you're right. I mean, that would be interesting, but yeah.
People are still talking about it. People are talking about it as far as like season 2 speculation.
All right. We'll see. I don't know if they're playing like a multi-season thing or if it's going to be literally.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 2-season thing. I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be.
That'll be interesting because I wonder if
2-act play essentially.
That's interesting because I wonder if any of the Disney Plus shows have gone into a season 3 period.
Well, I mean, the closest thing that we'd have is, I mean, Mando obviously is gonna.
Well, you're right. No, that's a good point. Yeah,
Great.
Mando. Here's the thing. Aside from Mando, do you think
Yeah.
that might be the first one to go into a season 3 period?
I mean, we don't know about Loki, but I'm willing to guess that Loki is going to be another like 2-act sort of thing.
Well, that's the thing, because it makes me wonder, like with Loki and with this, perhaps are these figured out to be okay? The most we're really going to go on these things are 2 seasons, and of course, Mando being the popular juggernaut that is, perhaps that one is the exception, but who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, only the shareholders know. Anyway. Okay, so let's see. The bell tower kick, which of course is really cool. And kind of he's ringing the bell like a madman. He says, "Hey, these stormtroopers want to stop me. Guess what? I'm going to kick them off the bell tower."
I got to give it up to, like I said about the dynamic with Cassian and B, how they're like siblings. That moment of Cassian's B's like, "You always say that, Cassian, and you always come through." Oh God, so good, so good.
Yep.
All right. Okay, let's see. Paragon says, as of right now, it's 2 seasons with fewer time gaps leading right up to Rogue One.
Okay, well, there you go then.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when you think about it. Rogue One is built around like the literal link up of A New Hope, and Andor is going to build presumably to the literal link up of Rogue One.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's kind of fun how that works. I'm not knocking. I like that sort of things. That's
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what we really need, Dragon, is we really need a solo show that leads into Andor.
You know, it's funny. I'm not saying this facetiously at all, but I just really like the idea that at some point we're going to be able to do like a whole one of those compilation videos of like here are all the various stages of the Death Star. So have like that's kind of a cool idea to me. Just saying, okay, we have like Galen Erso, just like yes, we'll build a Death Star, and then we just have the various phases of it. And then, of course, we have our post-credit scene here. We're like, oh, God, we put the gun on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So, yeah, Dragon, I think this is actually kind of like one of those rare times where I am more positive about something. I know you're not unpositive.
I'm just mixed on it, all right? I'm saying you're
not buzzing about it like I am.
I'm not remotely buzzing about it, but I am appreciative of the good stuff that is in here.
And for me, I genuinely think that I'm up there with the people saying that it's one of the best pieces of Star Wars storytelling ever. So
I say it's very refreshing for Star Wars, which So.
All right, so just big thanks to Keeper Colby, aka Paragon, for providing some inciting commentary along the way. We also had Slasher Fred, who points out that Spaceballs turns 35 this year.
Yep.
So that's fun. You know, I've never really been the biggest Spaceballs fan, Dragon.
I think I mentioned that once.
Like, it's fine. It's just, I think it's like, as far as the Mel Brooks stuff goes, I think it's kind of low hanging.
I mean, let's be honest. Spaceballs, the good part about Spaceballs is all the Dark Helmet stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's the thing. It's kind of like, can you really say the whole movie is, is great?
I do not like the designs of some of the characters in Spaceballs. I'll put it that way.
Well, you don't like John Candy as a dog?
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't like Joan Rivers. You don't like C-3PO with having. You don't like Joan Rivers getting the ultimate plastic surgery to look like C-3PO.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, and also Koski Productions popped in a couple times. So thanks. Well, okay. All right. And let's see. We're also going to be talking the holiday special tomorrow, folks. The Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special.
You got to be specific, given we just talked about Star Wars.
I know. No, you're right. You're right. That's. Have we ever done a full standalone podcast just talking about the Star Wars holiday special?
Honestly, I don't. Recall.
I don't think we have.
I don't think we have. There's a very slim chance.
I think the closest that we've gotten is just
we pitched a new.
Yeah, we pitched the Life Day overlay of Galaxy's Edge,
and we pitched the Mando holiday special, which had of course very famously,
which was basically the Life Day overlay of Galaxy's Edge.
So essentially, we kind of pitched that twice. Only the Mando holiday special actually was a lot more action. It also had a Kevin Smith cameo in it.
Dude, I need to see Kevin Smith as a startled Star Tours passenger if it kills me. All right. Okay. All right, that'll do it for us this week as we holster our remotes till the next installment calls for the draw. Mano y mano. Just plus. And us. ATSTs.
DJ Cleb.